Welcome to the Zero Employee Company, based on the book by Giovanni Brees. So far, memory has meant remembering what happened. The world model keeps the priorities. The vector store keeps durable facts. The logs keep the events. You need all of that, but there's another kind of memory that almost nobody builds, and it's what separates a system that can recall facts from one that understands who it's dealing with. Here's the difference. One system remembers what happened. The other builds a model of who someone is. A fact store can tell you that a customer asked about pricing twice and churned once. It can't tell you how that customer thinks, what they care about, or how they usually make decisions. For that, the system has to reason about the person instead of simply pulling up old records. That's a separate layer with a separate job. It's called the identity layer. The clearest version Giovanni has found is Honcho, an open-source project from Plastic Labs. Honcho calls itself the identity layer for the agentic world. Its approach is called reasoning first memory. A plain vector store saves chunks of conversation so it can find similar chunks later. Honcho goes further. It draws conclusions about a participant and builds a coherent model of that participant over time, using the model's own reasoning. So the result isn't a note saying, this person used these words. It's closer to this. Based on everything this person has said and done, here's what they seem to value, and here's how they tend to behave. Honcho doesn't call its basic unit a user. It calls it a peer. A peer can be a human, an AI agent, a project, or even an idea. Each one is treated as a first-class entity that changes over time. That framing matters. The same machinery that models your customer can also model your agents, including how one agent should reason about what another agent knows. If you're running a multi-agent operation, that's pretty much the exact problem sitting in front of you. And the output is practical. Honcho exposes the conclusions it has drawn about a peer. It gives you compact representations and peer cards that can go straight into a prompt, so an agent gets immediate context about who it's talking to. It also produces ready-made session summaries. There's a scheduled consolidation step called Dreamer, too. Every so often, Dreamer reasons over everything that is piled up. It's the same weekly consolidation instinct Giovanni covered in the vector memory episode, except here it's built into the system. Okay, so how do you run it? Because that's the part you actually asked for. Honcho has Python and TypeScript SDKs, and there are two ways to run it. The fast option is its managed service at api.honcho.dev. You get free credits to start, receive an API key, and can be calling it within minutes. There's no infrastructure for you to set up. The controlled option is self-hosting. Honcho is a FastAPI server that you run yourself. Under the hood, it uses PostgreSQL with the pgvector extension for storage and Redis for caching. It also needs an embedding model and a language model to handle the reasoning. The trade-off is right there in the stack. A flat file world model is one file that gets rewritten once a day. Honcho is a real service. It has a database, a cache, and models running behind it. There's more to set up and more that has to stay healthy. So when should you use this instead of the plain vector store from the last episode? Giovanni's rule is pretty simple. If the business mainly needs to remember its own rules and decisions, it probably doesn't need an identity layer yet. The vector store is enough. But maybe the business wins by understanding each customer deeply over a long relationship. Maybe personalization is a real operating advantage rather than a word someone dropped into a marketing deck. In that case, the model of the peer is where the advantage sits. That's what this layer is for. On its published benchmarks, Honcho posts strong numbers on independent agent memory tests, while using only a small slice of the context window. That matters because context is the scarcest resource here. Still, benchmarks shouldn't make the decision for you. The real question is whether modeling the person is where your business wins. Step back for a second, and the full memory map comes into view. A serious agent operation has three separate memory jobs. First, it needs shared priorities and rules that everyone agrees on. That's the world model. Then it needs a record of what happened, retrieved by meaning. That's the vector store. And it needs a model of who the peers are and how they think. That's the identity layer. Almost everyone builds the first layer, some build the second. Almost nobody builds the third. And that third layer is where personalization stops being a slogan and becomes something the system can actually do. So if you remember one thing from this episode, make it this. Memory isn't a single system. There are at least 3 parts to it, and the part most people are missing is the one that models the human on the other end. Whether Giovanni would build it now comes down to one question. Does the business win because it understands that person? If the answer is yes, the identity layer matters. If the answer is no, the simpler memory stack is probably enough. The last episode in this series pulls everything together into the system Giovanni actually opens every morning, the second brain. Giovanni Brees mapped the full memory landscape in his book, The Zero Employee Company. Link in the show notes. See you in the next one.